In February 1912, inside the Hall of Supreme Harmony, 6-year-old Puyi officially abdicated the Dragon Throne, abruptly terminating more than 260 years of Qing Dynasty rule and over 2 millennia of imperial monarchy in China. Standard historical summaries often treat this pivotal moment as the complete disappearance of the House of Aisin Gioro, as if thousands of imperial princes, noble bannermen, and palace courtiers simply evaporated once the imperial seal was surrendered. Yet behind the palace walls lay an expansive aristocratic network of roughly 80,000 to 140,000 clan members who suddenly found themselves stripped of state stipends, legal immunities, and hereditary prestige in an increasingly hostile political landscape. To survive the turbulent transitions from the early republic through the warlord eras and into the People's Republic of China, this fallen aristocracy engineered a calculated strategy of reinvention. Rather than retreating into romanticized exile or staging armed rebellions, the vast majority of the imperial lineage chose systematic assimilation. They shed their multisyllabic Manchu names, adopted common Han surnames, burned family genealogical records during ideological upheavals, and quietly entered the emerging modern workforce. Within just 2 generations, the direct bloodline of emperors transformed itself into elementary school educators, regional geologists, factory technicians, and civil servants. This transition was far more than an act of survival. It represents one of the most remarkable social realignments in modern Asian history. Examining where the descendants of the Qing Dynasty work today provides a rare window into the mechanisms of state building, identity preservation, and social mobility in modern China. By tracing how former royals became master calligraphers, university professors, and municipal administrators, this documentary reveals how the world's largest fallen dynasty navigated the shift from divine imperial authority to the everyday realities of ordinary citizenship. On the morning of November 5th, 1924, the illusion of imperial continuity in Beijing was permanently shattered. The Christian warlord, General Feng Yuxiang, seized military control of the capital through a sudden coup and sent his troops into the Forbidden City. Armed soldiers surrounded the private imperial apartments, gave the 18-year-old Puyi and his court a strict 3-hour ultimatum to pack their personal belongings, and revoked the articles of favorable treatment that had allowed the former imperial household to reside inside the palace since the 1912 abdication. This sudden eviction sent shockwaves far beyond the palace walls, triggering an immediate economic crisis for the broader Manchu nobility. Under Qing rule, hundreds of thousands of imperial bannermen, entitled relatives, had survived on guaranteed monthly grain allocations, silver stipends, and hereditary land rights. With the warlord administration unilaterally canceling these historic subsidies, an entire hereditary class, largely untrained in manual trades, commerce, or modern administrative skills, faced overnight financial insolvency. For the vast majority of extended imperial relatives living in the hutongs and residential districts surrounding the imperial city, the luxury of aristocratic leisure evaporated instantly. The immediate necessity of feeding families forced former princes, dukes, and courtiers into Beijing's bustling informal economy. Men who had once worn silk robes and jade pendants were suddenly seen pawning calligraphy collections, family jewelry, and antique porcelain to buy basic staples like flour and coal. As the physical assets of the old order were steadily liquidated, descendants were forced to seek immediate wage labor in sectors that demanded neither political allegiance nor specialized industrial training. Many younger bannermen turned to urban transport, pulling rickshaws through the dusty avenues of Beijing, a job where physical anonymity and sheer endurance took precedence over family pedigree. Others found entry-level positions as warehouse clerks, postal workers, street vendors, and municipal manual laborers. This rapid transition was complicated by widespread anti-Manchu sentiment that had simmered since the 1911 Xinhai Revolution. In popular Republican discourse, the Qing nobility was frequently depicted as an idle, parasitic elite responsible for decades of national decline, unequal treaties, and foreign encroachment. Carrying an imperial lineage openly on the streets of 1920s, Beijing was not merely a social liability, it posed a direct threat to personal safety and commercial livelihood. To secure employment in competitive local businesses, imperial descendants actively concealed their ancestry through systematic name changes. Aisin Gioro clan members overwhelmingly adopted common Han surnames, most notably Jin, effectively erasing their Manchu identity on civilian registration records and employment logs. By presenting themselves as ordinary northern laborers and clerks, they shielded their households from political retribution while competing for survival in the urban job market. The eviction of 1924 also marked a deep institutional turning point in how noble families educated their children. Realizing that hereditary titles would never return, aristocratic parents pivoted away from traditional court etiquette and classical Manchu archery, redirecting their children toward practical vocational skills, modern accounting, mathematics, and Mandarin pedagogy. The classroom and the workshop replaced the court as the primary venues for intergenerational advancement. Ultimately, Feng Yuxiang's expulsion of the imperial court did not destroy the house of Aisin Gioro. Rather, it catalyzed its forced modernization. By stripping away imperial subsidies and forcing the nobility into the realities of wage labor, the crisis of 1924 laid the foundation for the clan's 20th century evolution, turning a detached feudal aristocracy into an adaptable working-class demographic that would successfully integrate into the modern Chinese state. If the Qing Dynasty still held power today, Jin Yuzhang would theoretically occupy the Dragon Throne as the recognized head of the House of Aisin Gioro. Born in Beijing in 1942, he is the eldest son of Prince Puren, the youngest half-brother of China's last emperor Puyi, and the grandson of Zaifeng, the prince regent who governed the empire during its final years. Yet, in place of ceremonial dragon robes and dynastic rituals, his daily life was defined by the modest attire of an environmental bureaucrat, reviewing municipal files and navigating public transport in contemporary Beijing. Rather than seeking privileges tied to his historic bloodline, Jin Yuzhang built a career through modern technical education. He enrolled at the Beijing Geological College, now the China University of Geosciences, specializing in geophysical prospecting. In 1968, amidst the ideological turbulence of the Cultural Revolution, he graduated into a political environment where traditional aristocratic heritage was considered a severe liability. Survival demanded total immersion in practical nation-building labor far removed from the capital's political center. Assigned to the 2nd Geological Team under the Qinghai Provincial Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources, Jin spent 17 years in the rugged, remote plateaus of western China. During this period, he conducted demanding field surveys, mineral prospecting, and resource mapping under harsh environmental conditions. In later interviews, he reflected on this era pragmatically, noting that the remote assignment provided both a solid livelihood and an effective layer of political insulation during China's most volatile decades. In 1985, as the political climate normalized following the launch of economic reforms, Jin Yuzhang returned to Beijing to work as a technician in the Chongwen District Bureau of Environmental Protection. He applied his geological background to the capital's rapid urban modernization, monitoring pollution levels, managing land use assessments, and coordinating environmental compliance across a densely populated municipal district. By 1999, his decades of professional service led to his appointment as the deputy director, vice district head, of Beijing's Chongwen district government, overseeing public portfolios that included ethnic and religious affairs, legal records, elderly welfare, and local chronicles. Concurrently, he was appointed deputy director of the Beijing Ethnic Affairs Commission, leveraging his Manchu identity not to promote royal nostalgia, but to coordinate ethnic minority community policies within the municipal administration. A defining characteristic of Jin's public career was his status as a non-communist party civil servant. Serving within the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, an advisory body that includes representatives from ethnic minorities and prominent historical families, he functioned as a bridge between historical heritage and contemporary civic administration. His participation demonstrated that imperial descendants could actively contribute to state governance without posing an ideological challenge to the modern republic. When international journalists occasionally sought him out as China's heir apparent, Jin consistently rejected dynastic nostalgia and restorationist sentiments. He emphasized that the Qing Dynasty collapsed due to internal decay, isolationism, and economic stagnation, stating plainly that he viewed himself first and foremost as an ordinary citizen and public servant dedicated to improving his local community. Jin Yuzhang retired from official municipal duties in 2008, spending his retirement tending garden plants, studying history, and living a quiet, unassuming life in Beijing. His career illustrates how the modern heads of the Aisin Gioro dynasty navigated 20th century China, not by relying on lost imperial status, but by establishing legitimacy through technical expertise, public service, and pragmatic civic integration. In 1947, as post-war inflation soared and the Chinese Civil War engulfed northern China, the Prince Chun Mansion in Beijing's Shichahai district witnessed an unprecedented transformation. Puren, later known publicly as Jin Youzhi, the youngest half-brother of China's last emperor Puyi, made a decisive choice to convert a large portion of the hereditary palace compound into a private educational facility named the Jingyi Primary School. With financial support from his father, Prince Regent Zaifeng, Puren sold family heirlooms, converted imperial courtyards into open classrooms, and formally opened the gates to children from local working-class households. Establishing a private school was not merely a philanthropic endeavor. It was an astute defensive strategy designed to protect the household from expropriation and public hostility. In the late 1940s, Beijing, vacant aristocratic estates were frequent targets for requisition by competing military and civic factions. By converting the family mansion into an active, highly visible community school, Puren positioned the imperial residence as a public utility rather than an idle feudal relic. effectively deterring arbitrary seizures while generating a legitimate, honorable source of civilian revenue. From its founding, Jingyi Primary School operated as a family enterprise dedicated to practical primary pedagogy. Puren served as the school's founding principal, while his younger sister, Princess Yunhuan, later adopting the civilian name Jin Yuzhang, took up duties as a full-time teacher. Rather than teaching arcane classical court etiquette or Manchu genealogy, the siblings taught standard Republican curricula, focusing on core literacy, elementary arithmetic, practical science, and classical poetry to provide neighborhood children with baseline civic skills. The school's foundational model shifted dramatically with the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. Recognizing the rapid nationalization of private enterprise and the ideological demands of the new state, Puren made the pragmatic decision to donate Jingyi Primary School, along with its extensive educational equipment and library collections, directly to the municipal government. Rather than retiring or demanding executive compensation, he willingly relinquished administrative control, transitioned to the rank of an ordinary state salaried teacher, and requested to continue teaching his students inside the public school system. This transition into the state education sector provided Puren with a valuable degree of political protection during subsequent political vetting campaigns. By earning a modest living through direct classroom labor, the emperor's youngest brother established a clear identity as a productive socialist worker, rather than a dispossessed feudal claimant. Education was an ideologically respected profession in early socialist China, allowing Puren to blend into the municipal workforce while quietly demonstrating his allegiance to the public welfare. Throughout his 4-decade career as an elementary educator, Puren avoided calling attention to his imperial background. Colleagues and students across Beijing knew him as Teacher Jin, a humble, diligent instructor who rode a bicycle to work, graded assignments late into the evening, and rarely mentioned his proximity to the Forbidden City. He continued teaching in municipal public schools until his official retirement in 1988, having spent more than 40 years educating generations of Beijing's youth. Following his retirement, Puren leveraged his profound knowledge of Qing archives and classical literature to author detailed historical studies and documentary memoirs on palace life and late imperial administrative history. Rather than writing sensationalized insider accounts, his scholarship was characterized by methodical archival rigor, earning him research appointments at the Beijing Research Institute and multiple terms as an advisory delegate to the Beijing Municipal Political Consultative Conference. Puren's life trajectory illustrates how modern descendants of China's fallen imperial house negotiated social integration after 1912. By trading aristocratic privilege for the chalkboard and the classroom, Prince Puren demonstrated that the most effective path from royal exile to enduring civic legitimacy lay in mastering a practical, socially valuable profession. He passed away in Beijing in 2015 at the age of 96, remembered by the public not as an imperial pretender, but as a dedicated lifetime educator. Among the many descendants of the Qing imperial court who navigated the collapse of the monarchy, Prince Pu Ru, better known in the art world by his courtesy name Pu Xinyu, stands as one of the most prominent examples of an aristocrat who converted classical palace education into a celebrated professional career. Born in 1896 as the grandson of Prince Yihuan, the first Prince Chun, and a first cousin to Emperor Puyi, Pu Ru spent his formative youth immersed in the private libraries, imperial art collections, and rigorous scholastic traditions of the late Qing nobility. The foundational pillar of Pu Ru's technical mastery was his direct, unrestricted access to the vast masterworks preserved within Prince Gong's mansion and the imperial household. Unlike ordinary painters of his era, who had to rely on woodblock manuals and secondhand copies, Pu Ru spent years directly transcribing original Song and Yuan dynasty masterworks. This immersion allowed him to internalize ancient brushwork methods, inkwash control, and poetic inscription styles that had largely vanished from mainstream regional academies. Following the fall of the dynasty in 1912 and the subsequent loss of family estates, Pu Ru resisted entering the volatile realm of early Republican politics, choosing instead to retreat to the Jing Temple in Beijing's western hills. For over a decade, he lived as a reclusive scholar, dedicating himself entirely to the study of classical philosophy, poetry, and landscape painting. This period of intense, disciplined isolation refined his technical skill, transforming him from a privileged connoisseur into an exceptionally skilled independent artist. By the late 1920s, Pu Ru emerged into Beijing's public art scene, where his work instantly captivated collectors and traditional scholars. In an era when modern Chinese art was rapidly fragmenting under Western aesthetic influences and commercialization, Pu Ru's paintings represented an authentic, pristine continuation of the literati ideal. Art critics and collectors soon paired him with the Southern master Zhang Daqian, coining the famous cultural phrase Southern Zhang and Northern Pu to celebrate the two undisputed titans of contemporary traditional landscape painting. Pu Ru did not simply sell paintings to survive. He institutionalized his expertise by becoming a leading educator in China's emerging tertiary art institutions. He accepted faculty appointments at the National Beiping Art College and Fujian Catholic University in Beijing, teaching traditional brushwork and poetry to a new generation of Chinese students. His pedagogical approach demystified elite palace techniques, establishing structured curricula that preserved ancient methods within a modern classroom framework. The political fracture of China in 1949 forced Puyi into another decisive transition, prompting his relocation to Taiwan via Hong Kong. Arriving in Taipei, he was quickly appointed as a senior professor in the Fine Arts Department at National Taiwan Normal University. Through his lectures and studio masterclasses, he played a central role in establishing the island's classical painting traditions, influencing prominent post-war artists who sought to maintain a direct lineage to classical mainland brushwork. Beyond his institutional teaching, Puyi's technical versatility spanned fine-line figure painting, sweeping mountain landscapes, expressive calligraphy, and traditional ghost and deity lore. He consistently rejected the label of a professional commercial painter, insisting throughout his life that he was a scholar first, a poet second, a calligrapher third, and a painter last. This unwavering intellectual integrity earned him universal respect across deep political divides, allowing him to be celebrated as a cultural treasure rather than a political relic. Puyi's life and legacy illustrate the vital role played by Qing Imperial descendants in safeguarding traditional Chinese culture across the 20th century. When he passed away in Taipei in 1963, he left behind thousands of authenticated masterworks and an extensive educational lineage. By translating the private artistic heritage of the Forbidden City into public academic instruction and influential studio practice, Puyi demonstrated how the artistic capital of a fallen dynasty could find enduring relevance in the modern world. As China transitioned into the 21st century as a global technological powerhouse, the generational divide within the house of Aisin Gioro widened in unprecedented ways. While their grandparents sought survival in primary school classrooms, and their parents built careers in state geological teams and heavy industrial bureaus, fourth and fifth generation descendants found themselves navigating an entirely different economic landscape. Unburdened by the direct political stigmas of the 20th century, this younger cohort stepped into the high-growth ecosystems of software development, digital communications, algorithmic finance, and international corporate strategy. For these modern descendants, entering tech hubs like Beijing's Zhongguancun district and Shanghai's Pudong Tech Corridor was an organic extension of meritocratic education. Having attended top-tier domestic institutions such as Tsinghua University, Peking University, and regional polytechnic institutes, their career trajectories mirrored China's broader rising class of urban professionals in corporate software architecture, network infrastructure, and enterprise data analytics. Ancestral lineage carried no practical weight. Success was measured solely in code optimization, technical competency, and project delivery. A significant dimension of this technological pivot has been the diaspora of younger clan members to global tech and corporate epicenters in North America, Europe, and Japan. Pursuing advanced degrees in computer science, human-computer interaction, and applied mathematics, many modern descendants established quiet, highly successful careers within multinational software giants and financial tech conglomerates. Living in cities like Seattle, Tokyo, and London, they operate as global knowledge workers, fully detached from the dynastic symbolism of late imperial China. Within the corporate landscape, descendants have also carved out influential niches in management consulting, venture capital, and digital media production. The generational shift toward consulting and strategic marketing reflects a sophisticated adaptation to contemporary knowledge economies, where analytical problem-solving and cross-border commercial literacy drive advancement. Rather than maintaining closed aristocratic circles, these professionals leverage modern professional networks, multinational corporate boards, and digital communication platforms to navigate global markets. In the digital media and creative technology sectors, several younger descendants have embraced creative agency roles, game development, and user experience design. This intersection of tech and digital arts represents a contemporary synthesis of ancestral artistic sensibilities and modern commercial tools. By participating in the development of video games, streaming platforms, and digital animation studios, they contribute to the modern creative economy while working entirely within modern commercial frameworks. Crucially, this tech-oriented generation maintains a remarkably relaxed and pragmatic relationship with their imperial heritage compared to their predecessors. While their great-grandparents had to systematically burn genealogical records and adopt pseudonyms to avoid political persecution, younger software engineers and corporate analysts view their Aisin Gioro ancestry primarily as an interesting piece of family trivia. In daily workplace interactions across tech campuses and consulting offices, their surname is rarely brought up, serving neither as a badge of pride nor as a social liability. The rise of the digital economy has also provided a new platform for younger descendants to engage with historical preservation on their own terms. Utilizing open source databases, digitized archives, and online cultural initiatives, tech-literate descendants have participated in grassroots efforts to document endangered Manchu language archives and digitize Qing court artifacts. Through coding and digital curation, technology has become an instrument for cultural safeguarding rather than political restoration. Ultimately, the career paths of the 21st century Aisin Gioro generation reflect the complete and definitive normalization of the imperial lineage. Working as software developers, corporate strategists, data scientists, and digital creatives, these modern professionals embody the final chapter of a centuries-long evolution. They demonstrate that the ultimate transformation of an ancient imperial house lies not in preserving an obsolete royal court, but in mastering the digital infrastructure and intellectual demands of the modern global economy. In contemporary China, navigating the delicate boundary between state-sanctioned historical narratives and private imperial heritage is a complex balancing act for modern Aisin Gioro descendants. The official historical consensus established by the modern state portrays the late Qing Dynasty as a period marked by bureaucratic stagnation, feudal corruption, and national humiliation under foreign imperialist pressure. Consequently, any public reclamation of imperial identity must carefully avoid any perception of monarchist nostalgia or political revisionism, focusing strictly on legitimate cultural preservation and ethnic minority heritage. To remain within safe ideological parameters, modern descendants have strategically reframed their activities around the preservation of Manchu ethnic minority culture. Recognized officially as one of China's 56 state-acknowledged ethnic groups, the Manchu people enjoy legal recognition, linguistic protection policies, and cultural representation. Descendants leverage this civic framework to organize language workshops, classical archery demonstrations, and traditional folkcraft exhibitions under the banner of celebrating China's diverse multicultural fabric, entirely stripping their heritage of claims to dynastic supremacy. A critical area of ongoing focus is the preservation of the critically endangered Manchu language, which is now spoken fluently by only a handful of elderly native speakers in remote parts of Heilongjiang province. Aisin Gioro scholars and community volunteers work alongside municipal universities, cultural institutes, and linguistic archives to document rare spoken dialects, translate historical court records, and publish open-access learning materials. In this pedagogical context, imperial descent is transformed from a marker of political privilege into a commitment to linguistic rescue and academic documentation. Descendants also play a vital role in safeguarding intangible ritual traditions, such as classical ancestral rites and Manchu shamanic ceremonies performed at historic cultural hubs like the Shenyang Imperial Palace. Rather than organizing these events as exclusive royal ceremonies, clan representatives collaborate with local tourism boards and municipal cultural authorities. These public gatherings are presented as living historical reenactments and educational showcases that honor regional history while strictly adhering to municipal regulations. In public discourse and media engagements, modern clan members consistently draw a clear distinction between the fall of the feudal system and the enduring value of traditional scholarship, poetry, and classical arts. When interviewed for television documentaries or cultural podcasts, descendants routinely emphasize that the 1911 Xinhai Revolution was an inevitable historical progression that modernized China. By publicly endorsing the end of absolute imperial rule, they ensure their efforts in classical art, calligraphy, and historical research are seen as genuine cultural contributions rather than reactionary posturing. The interaction between modern descendants and state-run museum institutions, such as the Palace Museum inside the Forbidden City, exemplifies this collaborative relationship. Many descendants serve as consulting historians, textile conservators, and archival translators, assisting institutional curators in identifying obscure court artifacts, interpreting imperial Manchu inscriptions, and contextualizing private court diaries. Their intimate ancestral knowledge becomes an invaluable state asset, enriching public historical understanding while reinforcing institutional collaboration. Modern digital platforms have further transformed how descendants manage this balance, allowing them to engage directly with younger generations without commercializing their lineage inappropriately. Through educational video series, digital calligraphy demonstrations, and interactive history forums, tech-literate descendants answer public questions about everyday Qing palace life, clearing up popular misconceptions created by sensationalized television dramas while promoting accurate historical literacy. Ultimately, the ability of modern Aisin Gioro descendants to balance state narratives with ancestral memory illustrates the mature integration of the imperial clan into modern civic life. By rejecting feudal claims, prioritizing linguistic and artistic preservation, and aligning with national cultural heritage initiatives, they have successfully redefined the legacy of the Dragon Throne. Their heritage is no longer a political liability or an instrument of division, but an active, respected component of China's shared cultural and historical landscape. Throughout imperial history, the rulers of the Qing Dynasty claimed the mandate of heaven, styling themselves as the absolute intermediaries between cosmic order and earthly civilization. Yet, when the imperial apparatus dissolved, the true test of survival for the Aisin Gioro clan was not how fiercely they clung to ritual titles, but how quickly they abandoned the divine aura of the throne in favor of practical, earthbound utility. The modern descendants found enduring security precisely by demystifying their own lineage and embracing the everyday rhythms of modern labor. This transformation reveals a profound historical irony. The very skills once reserved for private palace courts, classical literacy, administrative discipline, and cultural refinement, became the very tools that facilitated their complete integration into the modern workforce. By redirecting their focus from ruling an empire to serving local communities as school teachers, geologists, ophthalmologists, and software developers, the descendants achieved a level of personal stability and civic respect that dynastic politics could never guarantee. Unlike many European royal houses that spent decades in bitter exile, pursuing legal battles over confiscated estates and issuing claims of restoration, the House of Aisin Gioro took a distinct path. They largely chose integration over estrangement, trading ancestral palaces for municipal apartments and hereditary stipends for regular paychecks. In doing so, they neutralized political suspicion and built lives defined by personal contribution rather than ancestral privilege. The modern Chinese state, in turn, found a pragmatic reconciliation with its imperial past. Rather than treating the descendants as perpetual ideological threats, contemporary institutions engage with them as cultural stakeholders, linguistic consultants, and valuable contributors to national heritage preservation. This symbiotic balance allowed the descendants to preserve their Manchu identity and historical memory without compromising their status as loyal, productive citizens. On an individual level, the descendants of the Dragon Throne embody the broader socio-economic modernization of China itself over the past century. From the chaotic warlord eviction of 1924 to the high-tech digital corridors of the 21st century, their journey mirrors the nation's transition from a rigid agrarian hierarchy into a dynamic, tech-driven global economy where merit and technical competency supersede inherited birthright. The story of the Aisin Gioro clan is fundamentally a testament to institutional adaptability and cultural endurance. It demonstrates that a dynasty's true legacy does not depend on the physical possession of a throne or the continuity of absolute power, but on the capacity of its people to reinvent themselves when the world changes around them. Today, whether reviewing municipal environmental data in Beijing, developing software in modern tech hubs, or preserving endangered Manchu manuscripts in regional archives, China's former imperial lineage lives on not as relics of a vanished past, but as an active, integrated part of contemporary society. The throne room may be an open museum, but the people who once walked its corridors have successfully mastered the ordinary trades of the modern world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden mechanisms of modern history and the untold stories behind fallen empires, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know which historical dynasty's modern fate you would like to see us investigate next.